as well. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. Awesome. So first off, welcome to our kind of every other month session for physical education and wellness. I am Paul Marlette. I'm the one running a lot of the work that's behind the scenes. And oh, that transcript is actually quite annoying. Let's turn that off. My apologies. Can I stop it? Ooh. I'll figure that out once we get going. Anyway, so this session we're going to be looking at is all around like how do we work with English as an additional language students in phys ed? And the reason being is that in some of our calls in the past, what we had is we had people saying that they had 11 different languages in a specific class, 40 to 60 languages in the school, and they were really struggling because those students, when they would get into the games, they had different rules and they were having trouble explaining those rules. So when I started talking to Lynn and we started chatting about why that might be, I was like, no, I'm not the one to lead this session. So I'm going to turn this over to Lynn for the first little while, and I might jump in and ask questions as we go, Lynn, but take it away. We'll leave it to you to kind of take us through some of these things.
Okay, well, I do have a slideshow, but I do talk a lot. I don't read slides, but hopefully you'll be able to make some notes and kind of hang in with us. All righty. So supporting and you'll notice EAL. You're going to see acronyms from different parts of Canada and the US in the work I've done with different acronyms. Alberta Education uses now EAL. So I'm trying to remember to do that. Okay. Now let's see if I can get my screen to work here. There we go. Do a little bit of introductions. I met both of our, we've got Nicole joining us. Excellent. We'll also talk a little bit about some foundational knowledge that we actually need to know. I've got some strategies and resources. So I found two fabulous articles that are teacher friendly, great ideas. And in one of them, I was able to pull this out. And what I loved about it, it's talking about how phys ed is one of the best places for EAL students. It should be, for the most part, low anxiety, receptive, and it's what we refer to in EAL as the affective filter, about feelings and emotions, and they can build, self-confidence, and it's just such a great place for our students. And I am going to reflect on a couple of stories from my work over the years with EAL students. So just very briefly, worked for Edmonton Public. This is my 39th year with them as an educator. The last two have been as a sub. I'm retired officially, but 12 of those years as an ESL consultant and program coordinator with the division. But my last year, I went back to the classroom, not willingly, but it happened. And I'm glad I did. I had two boys from Ukraine. This was a classroom in a very upper middle class, suburban school, not something I'm normally used to. I taught in the inner city for 14 years, where the majority of my students were EAL, everything from what we call Canadian-born EAL students, or first generation, second generation English as an additional language learner, to refugee students, to new immigrants. So this new classroom with my two boys from Ukraine, the first boy, they didn't overlap. They came at two different times, and the first one moved to another school, but he had never been in school. He was very aggressive. First day of school, pulled a banana out of his lunch kit and started shooting people with it. So it was like, holy crap, I'm back in the inner city. I know what to do. Thank goodness I was his teacher and not somebody else. But phys ed, he just lost his mind. It was not structured enough. We had 3 grade 2 classes in the gym. It was chaos. I was not the lead in that school. I was a new person in the school. I just kind of stayed in the background. But I had to work one-on-one with this little guy quite a lot to get him to just follow the basic safety rules in a gym, because he'd never been in one before. So that was one reflection I have. But then I decided to ask some of my colleagues still teaching, and these were some things they thought I should focus on or have wonders about when I was looking. So safety, that's really number one. And then, yes, the curriculum, the content goals, but also we're going to touch on language goals. Behavior concerns comes up, cultural sensitivity and awareness, their social interactions, and how to communicate. So I'm kind of playing with these ideas today. And these were 2 other thoughts I had going in. In my career, there were a group of newcomers that came in 2010. 2010? Nope, 2006. Sorry about that, 2006. And they were newcomers they came out of Thai refugee camps, but they were originally from Burma, and they were of the Karen culture, which were nomadic peoples, and they'd been persecuted and pushed out of Burma, and they were living in what you see on the left-hand side of your screen. I asked through gestures, and we did not have Google Translate. I did happen to have an educational assistant who spoke Thai, and some of these kids could speak a bit of Thai. And we had her draw a house, and that house was a thatched roof on stilts. We go in the gym. This child's never been in school. They were refugees, so United Nations Convention refugees. But there was just something about her. She was my first student from that community. And she sat off to the side for a bit. We're playing floor hockey, and she's watching. In about 10 minutes, she got up, picked up a floor hockey stick, and was right in there playing. It just blew my mind. But that was her personality. She was definitely a sportsy kid, and I'm sure the only sport she'd ever tried was soccer. And really, the universal game in our world right now with EAL students is soccer. And then I had an opportunity to hear the child soldier story, Mikhail Chikawani. And he has a graphic novel about his story as a child soldier. Now, this isn't the picture. I did have a picture of the ball he played with, but it was garbage bags woven with twine. And that was their toy. That's what they played. Now, thinking about that, one of the things when you come out of poverty, a refugee camp, is you need to survive. And they have survival skills, and that may involve being aggressive and fighting for what you need, whether it's food or water or the only ball that's around. And when I looked for this image, I came across this book. It's Canadian written, and it says scarce resources at the camp, and bullies have formed groups to steal what they can. And I did go pick it up. I had it from the public library, and it's a great book to read. And it might be a good book to read with older students to get them thinking about where our students come from. But not all our students, of course, come from refugee situations, but a lot of them come from some pretty traumatic situations. And having said that, one of the things that, and I'm so glad you want to talk about this, because not all teachers outside of elementary classroom or the English language arts and literature classroom think it's their responsibility to discuss and work with a student's English language proficiency and development. But right in our document from Alberta Education is this paragraph. And it's very clear that it's all our every teacher's responsibility. So they don't just learn it by being in the gym. We do have to do a few very structured things to help students. Here's the whole acronyms thing I mentioned. Don't worry about it. I mean, Alberta's even behind now. It's in the States. It's the bottom two, multilingual learner or emergent bilingual. Not all of our students, is it a second language or are they bilingual? But just keep in mind, you're going to hear lots of acronyms in the work. I always spend time on this. I won't spend a lot of time. I'm just going to kind of touch on a couple that you may find of interest. Their journeys may be long, they may be short. They may have gone to school in a very traditional setting in the Philippines or India. They may have learned to play cricket. They may have learned to play football. They may never have had a phys ed class. So some of those things are of interest. Some of your students who are EAL may be Canadian born, and they may look like they know what they're doing and understand, but oftentimes they don't. Now, in phys ed, I wouldn't worry about them as much as I do in reading and writing, and you're not really assessing reading and writing. In phys ed, you are assessing other things, but it's just something to be aware of. Health history. This may have something, a connection. If they have any kind of physical or mental disability, up until the year 2016, they could not get permanent residency in Canada. And so sometimes parents are not willing to share information about a child's health, including if they need glasses or if they have a hearing disability, because they're scared of being quote unquote deported. They won't be. That doesn't happen anymore. That the rules at within the immigration department have changed, but it is kind of embedded in some families and cultures, including shame around disabilities in their culture. So being aware of that. And one of the ways to get to know your students, if you find out they're from a refugee camp, that's from their classroom teachers or other teachers they may have, or digging into their files if possible. Some divisions have, a lot of information in files. And another thing to keep in mind are the ESL or EAL benchmarks, which are now in their second version. Just touching on what learning a language is. You have your basic tip of the iceberg social language, and we have the academic language. Now, we may not think that we use academic language in phys ed, but we do. We're using the language of our content areas, and that would be considered academic language specific to your content area, just like in math, just like in science and social studies. So when parents are saying to you, we speak English, our child speaks English, they might only be in the BICS area. And oftentimes the parents are only in BICS. Our job for all students, not just EAL students, is to develop academic language, the language of textbooks, essays, PATs, diploma exams. So when parents are saying, don't worry about language, we need to be aware of it. And if we think about learning English in 3 levels, beginner, intermediate, and advanced, and this is the new benchmarks, they're all one. It used to be one set of benchmarks for every different division. Now we have all one divided into 3. If you are maybe in phys ed, maybe another content area or other options or in option classes, thinking about 3 levels of English language learners. And that's the way we're moving forward instead of the nuances between, 2 and 3. We're just going to talk about beginner, intermediate, and advanced. Advanced, I wouldn't worry too much about in your phys ed classes. The ones that you really need to focus on are your beginners for safety and vocabulary development. Your intermediate students will often get stuck there and not move forward without some, really specific strategies for English language development, especially in reading and writing. These are what the benchmarks look like very generally about where a student might be at. It's a helpful little visual that if you want ideas, if your teacher says, oh, he's a grade 3, he's a level 4, you look grade 3, level 4, oh, he's kind of advanced. So it gives you just a general overview of where your students might be. Now, of course, your beginners, you kind of know them pretty much, but some beginners will fool you. They may have a lot more receptive English but not be expressive, or vice versa. So talking to the other teachers of that student can be quite helpful. I've done assessments where the teacher would say, oh, she doesn't understand anything. And then I work with them one-on-one and she's like, whoa, she's way ahead. She's just not speaking yet. And there is a thing called the silent period where students or people, adults learning English may be quiet and choose not to be expressive. And that is perfectly normal. So what do I mean by content objectives and language objectives? Well, content, you get it. That's your program of studies. That's the work we're doing. And language objectives are our responsibility to help our students move forward with their English language development. So, hoping that we can think about some of these things when you're planning your lessons. And I'll explain that a little bit as we go along. The two areas that you would focus on, there are 4 strands for English language development. That's listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Your work is really around the listening and speaking. And I do still laugh a bit about that because, my daughter's very, very much an introvert. And even in his head, she got a comment that said, Caitlin needs to learn to vocalize to her teammates. Well, she never would. And every single class she'd get, Caitlin needs to participate more in class discussions. Some people just don't talk. Now, of course, she'll talk when she feels like it. Okay, this was my brain dump. These are just some ideas that don't really fit anywhere that I wanted. I was even going to call it, I had another term that sounded very unprofessional. So I'm just going to say, do not assume any prior knowledge. Some of our students didn't even know man had been in outer space or on the moon. One student didn't know during social studies that you had to kill the beaver, and that's how you ended up with beaver pelts and fur trade, et cetera, et cetera. So just that mindset of, gee, I wonder if they've ever heard of. And you might not find out, but it's just something to keep in the back of your head. And we're getting really good at this, trying out culturally relevant activities, sports, games, especially with our focus on Indigenous learnings. But there's also other areas of the world you can pull from the students in your classrooms to maybe something you've learned on a trip somewhere. And not just soccer, even though that's universal, we know that. And of course, they will call it football from anywhere in the States and Canada. They will not. They will call it soccer. Again, the connecting with other students, the other teachers of the student, just if they have any insight into your student's background. Now, this is the interesting one. Be aware of faith or cultural challenges. For example, Ramadan is coming this week, Friday, likely, depends on the moon. And my last year of teaching in a classroom, that sign that you see on the screen was actually hanging on my classroom door. And a student across the hall who was in the gym with us during gym time, we had two things going on in the gym. One was dance with music, and I was doing gymnastics. And this little grade 2 girl came up to me and said, "You know Ramadan, right?" And I said, "Well, I know a little bit about Ramadan." She goes, "Well, I can't do dance with music in gym during Ramadan. Can I come do gymnastics with you?" So just that sign hanging there, she was able to advocate for herself and solve her problem. Now, other students who are Muslim didn't bother them. It wasn't an issue in their family. I've taught a student who was not allowed to go to music class ever because of his faith, and he was also Muslim. So it all depends on each family's interpretation or each imam's, their faith leader. So we can't always assume every student will be the same. Not every girl wears a hijab. They might wear a hijab when they're older, or they might not, or they might try taking it off. And it's not our place to say anything. We just nod and move forward. Things like swimming. Girls cannot swim with boys for the most part in the Muslim faith. If you're doing that kind of activity, you need to kind of look into it. Or if you're having an outdoor education event, planning it during Ramadan with most of those students not eating, especially the older ones, during the daytime, not a great idea. So being aware of those things. You can't change everything, I know that, but the awareness is really important. And yes, girls can wear hijabs during phys ed. I know that's controversial out there, but you cannot ask them to take them off. You could ask them to tuck it in. Religious jewelry in many faiths, whether it's Sikh bracelets, are to be left on. So we just don't make comments about those things. So here's an essential question. What is the common language in your phys ed environment? Anyone want to jump in? What's a common language?
Are you looking for like specific wording, or is there a more general?
Just general. What would you say? I know that, Paul, you mentioned you were looking at getting stuff done in multiple languages.
Mhm. Oh, yeah, so we're at my school, we're English for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's English.
Yeah.
And our job, unless we're in a French immersion program, is English.
I was going to say English and hockey boy language.
Amen to that. And I will let you know, I was there when the Oilers won their first Stanley Cup. I had season tickets for 10 years with my dad. So I am a hockey, not a playing girl, but I am a born and bred Edmontonian, do or die, although Gretzky has fallen off. He's off his pedestal. And you know what? Whenever you put somebody on a pedestal, they fall off. So it's the Oilers as a whole in the 80s. But yes, and soon kids learn that, but they're still pretty stuck on soccer. Most of the classrooms that I've been subbing in the last year and a half, when you talk sports, yes, there's the hockey kids, but there's also a whole bunch of them. I bring up Alfonso Davies because I have a sort of kind of personal connection. The program he began soccer in started at my school. So anybody that is connected with our school, we kind of go, we had something to do with it. We didn't, but it's our little piece of the world. And so you bring up sports, it's still pretty big in the world soccer community. So English is our goal. But we also know that ASL, American Sign Language, is a language. And in some cases, that is a common language in a particular instance, not necessarily our regular classes, though. But another language we're going to say is a common language are visuals. So we're going to talk a lot about visuals today and different forms of visuals. Cues and signals are also visuals, but there could be auditory ones. There's something called TPR, total physical response. And when I started putting this together, I was just coming up with stuff that I thought I knew. And when I found the two articles and they actually matched what I thought I knew, I was very excited. But they have really good explanations. I'm just giving you a taste. Demonstrations will come up, consistency, and the academic language of phys ed. So, miming. We do a lot of miming in the ESL world, gestures, miming, and that's perfectly normal. If you've worked with a lot of students on the autism spectrum, you will heard of PECs. A lot of their EAs have those cards with the little visuals. I'm not overly fond of those. They work great for those students because wherever they go, they would be used. I don't find them to be as useful for EAL students, but they are available. One of the things I was reading or listening to, I also put in a video recording, or having GIFs on loops or memes or video clips that speak to what you're trying to get the message across. Symbols, really important. We use a lot of symbols in the world all around us, whether it's driving or different games, etc. Gaming has a lot of symbols in it. I prefer visuals that are photographs. I prefer using visuals that are photographs of the environment you're actually in. So this can be an assignment that older students do to create for your school. Maybe you have a photography option in your school and they can work on creating visuals. You can ask, maybe if an EA has a PD day where they're not joining your group, they can work on that. Or there's lots of ways to create these visuals without you having to do it. Maybe you have volunteers. I don't know, but definitely important to use color visuals.
Lynn,
Color gets in our brains better. Visuals help us learn quicker, and they also help with developing language. You can have words with your visuals. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's the English words. Now, do we rely on translation? If it's a safety issue and you want them to stop, now, remember, not all of them will be able to read the language. They may not be educated in their first language and literate. You may also not ever know what language they understand. Some places in Africa, the languages aren't in our Google Translate. And the parents may know one language, but the children might know another. They might be educated in one language and use another in the home. It can be very difficult to get the right language. So one of my Ukrainian students, he knew more Russian than he did Ukrainian. So it was very interesting. So Google Translate is not always our best friend. Here's some other reasons to use visuals. Here you can see more of the cartoony pictures. This is a particular illustrator, Valentina Gonzalez. I think that's hers. Well, maybe someone else's, who do lots of things for ESL teachers, and they do them with drawing. Here's your PECs on the right-hand side with phys ed. Again, I don't know. They don't work for me. I'd rather see children. So this was a funny one I found on the left, muscle of the month. And well, if you want to see a muscle, I guess on the Hulk it would work, but that reference our ESL students might not get, right? Here was just on Teacher Pay Teacher. They had some that were pretty good about different equipment, and so those are helpful. And we'll talk a bit about word walls at the end. Okay, I went into every elective. Great stuff, love it. But let's talk about these 3 different cards. What can you tell me? What do you see? If you're showing a group of students,
I'd say the bear crawl thing isn't really any good because it doesn't actually show you how a person would bear crawl.
yeah, it's a cute bear. I don't get it. Yeah, I mean, it's adorable, but you're not seeing what crawling is in a human. Yes, it's cute. What about the middle one?
The only thing I really notice here is that it's got that, it's kind of totally out of proportions, like it's a drawn image.
Has a
like
border that just be distracting.
Yeah, and it's an
Very wordy
adult.
description.
Yeah, it's an adult, I think. I'm not sure. It's just really weird. The last one, it's got a human, a child in the middle of the 3. It's not bad. I'm interested why they've got cow instead of dog. But animals can also be problematic. Any idea why?
Dogs are unclean with Islam.
Yep. As are one other animal.
Pigs.
Right. Yeah. So we had one of the things that ESL teachers do is a vocabulary visuals test. And there's a picture of a piggy bank. And many of the Muslim children go, oh, yeah, dirty. And they don't know. The whole idea is, do they know what a piggy bank is? No, of course they don't. But a pig is dirty, a dog is dirty. So I don't know. I didn't mind the last one because it had an actual child drawing, but I love photographs of real children.
Lynn, can I just jump in there and just,
Sure.
one of the first things that Lynn and I talked about was that notion of the, what are they called? PECs, those standard ones?
Text, yeah.
Yeah, and that's when Lynn let me know that a lot of the kids she worked with, some of them haven't seen cartoons. They don't understand those drawn images. They don't mean anything to them. So trying to have a variety of models, right, from even like different ethnic groups of your kids that are their age, that was such a shift when I started thinking about that.
Yeah. So I tried to drop in a few of those images throughout this presentation that you'll see. This was really great, and it's from one of the articles I'm going to share. I wish they had a link to every picture. It would have made our lives easier, but these are really great. So they've got real kids doing real activities. They're laminated on a ring. Students can lead the activity. I just thought this is a great idea. But it's how do we get the photographs done? Who can make this all? But you know what? There's ways to do it. And once you get the whole thing done, you've got it for a few years. So signals and cues. Hey, we all carry a whistle. So let's, first of all, when I worked for somebody who loved whistles, and I used to say children aren't dogs. But after teaching for a while, I needed a whistle. I had to save my voice. So I learned I needed a whistle. You can have whistle signals that are, well ingrained with the students. You can have hand gestures, but those have to be taught. And we'll talk about consistency in a bit. You can't just teach it once and think everybody gets it. And this is for all students, right? Kids with learning disabilities, kids with attention challenges, but they're all really valuable strategies for ESL as well. So this was just somebody had put together a little, stop, drop, and listen. And yes, using English is okay, but I would pair it with some kind of visual, whether you've got a stop sign and it flips to somebody sitting or putting equipment down to sitting on the floor, whatever works for you. a 3-point visual. So TPR, this is really big in the ESL world. It's literally having a student do something. Go turn on the light. Pick up the ball. So having them do it physically, and that helps the language get in the brain. So have your student demonstrate and act it out. So it's movement with language. It's kind of a no-brainer. I think we all do it, but there's actual science and research behind this, and it's been around for a long time. Here's the sequence of how you do it. And you already do these, but just covering the real good basics. Join in the movements, demonstrating, slow down our language. Louder doesn't help. Slowing down our language helps. We as teachers talk way too fast. Too many instructions at once. So when I went back to teach, and one of the new teachers, the other grade 2 teachers, had come from teaching phys ed to junior highs. So she'd give out like 5 or 6 instructions at once, and I'd be like, well, this is grade 2. Let's try 2, maybe 3 instructions at once. So just remembering that EAL students who are beginners need only 1 or 2 directions at once. And it just kind of sets up everybody to be at the same place. All right, modeling, demonstrating, follow the leader, I do, you do, student demonstrations, not always your most athletic student demonstrating, teacher demo, getting if you're sharing with another class, other teachers demoing. I know our schools are so crowded these days that we have multiple classes in the gym at a time, which I find very stressful. Especially like which teacher is actually leading. So, but as a sub, I just go with the flow. So lots of modeling and connecting the language. So using a pool noodle is not normal from India. I highly doubt any of the kids who've been to school in India have ever played with a pool noodle, but it's fun. They love it. But you just kind of have to explain them. That's not sports equipment in India. So, but it's fun. And they catch on really quickly. And consistency. All the phys ed teachers really, like if you have multiple people, it would be really nice if everybody could be on board with the same signals so that the students don't have to relearn them every year. A predictable routine for your class. They come in, they jog, and you model what jogging is, because some of my kids would just come in and smack into the walls. Learning to stop. You stay on your feet. You don't slide across the gym. And relearning, reteaching this all the time, because they'll try to slip back into whatever they want to do. Refer to those visuals. If you have bulletin boards in the actual gym, having a word wall, which we'll talk about, is really important. And if everybody's going along great, you don't need to refer to these things, inevitably you'll get a new student. And inevitably they won't have English. So you have to start over again, but it's a good refresher, especially after holiday breaks. Having a refresher of those basic safety rules, the basic routines are all really important. But trying to be on the same page, like having 3 of us teaching gym was not working. Like I just let one person be the leader. Didn't teach like I taught or would teach, like lost her mind when I brought a parachute out. But hey, I still love a parachute. I started teaching in the 80s. Can you tell? But they love it. We had a blast, but it wasn't in the curriculum, I made it fit. Okay, content area vocabulary. So beginning with this picture on the right of the teacher, I would have something on the wall with body parts. Like, if you want their hands touching their shoulders, you need to show what shoulders are. You might do an alphabet word wall, but have visuals on it, cartoons on this. You know what? You can't do every picture with a photograph, but having something you can refer to. There was one person speaking in a video I listened to about a help wall, and there are some examples coming up. That vocabulary, locomotor, all those words that are in the vocabulary of our program of studies, are we responsible for them knowing that vocabulary? Yeah, kind of. So maybe we should start focusing on that. And here's an example. On the right, you do see locomotor right there. I kind of like those. Although, you know, a giraffe is up high. Made sense. And yes, you can buy things off of Teacher Pay Teacher, or you find out from your own phys ed group in your, your school division. Has somebody got this? And reaching out and not reinventing the wheel all the time. I think that's one of the things I dislike the most about teaching is everybody's making the same things for the same curriculum, but and Alberta Ed does try to have a depository of stuff. It's never official. These boards, the Alberta Ed boards that we're supposed to put stuff in, but none of it's vetted, and you kind of wonder, but it would be a nice place to share. So here's some of the boards. The middle one show children moving. There's rules, schedules, the learning targets, the word wall with, they don't have visuals. I would have a separate one with visuals. I might only focus on the unit we're doing at a time. Otherwise, the word wall gets kind of crazy. This next, oh no, the one after this. This was an interesting one. I thought, the students self-evaluating. They talk about heart rate at one point. What is your, I was subbing in a grade 6 last week. And they were putting no effort in, like none. And the teacher just reamed them out like, are any of you on a hockey team? And half the class was. It's like, do you do that for your coaches? Oh, no. Well, why are you doing it here? So that was interesting. So this one had in the middle 3 posters, and they found visuals of what they were doing. I can't read it clearly in this, but I found it interesting. Not enough visuals, I would say, of course, on the word wall there. And I would have rules, discipline. I don't like saying rules, like expectations or agreements. Rules are made to be broken in my world, so, Okay, these 4 things, and I've got the consortium link there, and that's got tons of Paul's stuff in it. And yes, I looked at it and I learned lots, Paul. The top one is a video of a teacher just being interviewed, but she's got some great stuff. And then those bottom 2 articles, I cannot stress enough how much I learned, and that I saw how teachers are doing things right. And I'm sure you're seeing yourselves in a lot of this that you're already doing, but just bringing it to focus that you are already doing this. So there's my, I went 48 minutes, pretty close. There you go.
No, you're perfect with that. So just before I kind of wrap up with some of my thoughts with this, Lynn, first off, thank you so much. I've been typing in some of the stuff you've been talking about, and it's just those little changes. But we also do have some time here to open up to some questions from stuff that Lynn was talking about, or any other specific things you might have. And after a little bit of this, we'll take a short break, and then we'll come back and do the rest of our kind of collaborative stuff for this month. So does anyone have any questions, comments, or clarifications from Lynn? And just unmute. There's only 6 of us on the call, so.
Well, I'm kind of thinking like I had like in the gymnasium, I had a whole bunch of like stretching diagrams, but they're all illustrated. And I'm wondering if having some actual pictures would make a whole big difference, like of people actually doing them. Because there's a couple of them that people just kind of don't seem to get in terms of like stuff. And I wonder if that would make a difference, even like regardless of what language they speak.
It might. Try it. Just, one or two. Don't do the whole thing over, just the ones they're struggling with. Hi, Nicole, where are you at? Oh,
Can't hear you there, Nicole. Just that. This
that's
happened
okay.
last time too. There's something always with your mic.
It's
Uh,
okay.
I do
It
want to type it in,
happens.
Nicole.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Does anyone have any other questions or comments for Lynn?
Ooh, Filipino dance. Ooh, I'd love to see that.
Yeah. The other thing I'll mention here is that we do have with the APLC, we have a fairly large World Games resource too that has
Oh,
about
cool.
8 games in it of stuff that we've kind of vetted, and I think Everactive has one as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah. While you guys are thinking, I just wanted to, Lynn, so I was making some notes here, and like the first time we talked, the biggest thing that really struck me was that these students are coming from a place where life and death was actually a thing. So we have these kids coming and they're so aggressive when they play, and it's just that perspective. Some other things that I really like took out of this was that notion of photographs again, that it takes time to build those, but that's really the imaging that they're going to start to recognize. And this TPR, what an interesting way to start looking at building that scope and sequence. And one of the things that Lynn mentioned here that we're going to talk a little bit about after our break here is this notion of predictable signs where an entire phys ed team actually comes together to build. I actually see it if you have a high EAL population, like many of the schools up in the north of Alberta, it might actually be something that the whole school could actually engage in. Right? So if we're asking students to just stop and focus, think about how much quicker they're going to be able to follow those routines. Yeah, this was amazing, Lynn. I'm so grateful that you had the time to put this together for us and support us. And I look forward to coming back to you with some of the stuff that we've implemented and seeing how it's working.
Oh, I'd love to hear it. And like I said, I had a blast doing this. Doing something new and different just gets the brain going. But also think a little bit about, the banana leaf ball and have conversations with students and even maybe some of the students that you've had for a few years in your school division that came from refugee camps and what that was like and what they played with and what games. I've learned so much from students over the years once they can speak English and are willing to share more and feel safe. Because at first they don't feel safe and they can't always express themselves. And that's where the aggression comes from. You've all heard about fight, flight, or freeze. We had an instance where a girl came from, horrific experiences. And in phys ed one day, she was grade 5, a ball hit her in the face and she fled. She went right through the gym doors outside, ran across that field. People are screaming at her to stop. I'm getting calls because I'd worked with the community support team that was working with her and her family. They called the police. They suspended her. Oh, she understands enough English to know the word stop. And I'm like, oh my God, she was in trauma. Like she wasn't hearing you. So just remembering that sometimes they're just not there. the brain is not there. Like the little guy I had from Ukraine, he was in, I don't know what he was in, because his mom just always referred to him as little boy in a big body. And he was a big kid, but he acted very young. And, for a year and a half, almost 2 at that point, had been living in the subway under the city. And, we can't always know. He's doing really well now from what I've heard. So I'm happy about that, but we just don't always know their stories.
When I was just having dinner with one of my mentors last week, he retired 20 years ago, but he was talking about how in the high school they were at in Calgary, he had a group of, it was about 20, I think they were Vietnamese refugees who had come and were at their school, and he ended up having them all in one class. And they were saying, like, sorry about this, and he said, don't worry, they play soccer, we'll do soccer a lot, we'll work it out. So they were outside playing soccer, and Hawk's helicopter flew over, and these 20 kids, they all bolted. Like, it was just, and he was just like, what's going on? And that's it. Those helicopters meant, like, your things are about to get ugly. So
Yeah.
even that recognition that these kids are coming from some horrible situations that we'll never understand.
Yeah.
Fabulous. Well, Lynn, thank you
right.
again from all of us here.
I'll
Go ahead.
send the slides off to you and you
Yeah,
can
perfect.
pass them on.
Awesome. Taylor, did you have one more thing there?
No, I just waving
Just
goodbye.
wait. Perfect. Awesome. So everyone else on the call, we'll take just like a maybe like about a 2 or 3 minute break. And when we get back, I'll put up my slideshow and we'll go through a few things and then we'll see what's been going on and how I can serve you. Okay. So Lynn, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see everyone in a couple of minutes.
All right. Take
All right.
care.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
So usually, sorry, I just had to open up another, for those of you who kind of joined us as we were going, like Edmonton, Calgary's, we have all of our custodial staff who went on strike. So we are not allowed to be at in the school past 4:30, and we can't get in till 8:30. So I'm not in my ideal filming situation right now. But it is what it is. We're all good to go. All right. I'm gonna have to close that. That looks fine. Okay. So first thing is I just want to do a quick follow-up on what Lynn was talking about. No, why can't I? Well, let me do this. Okay. Cancel. Sorry, usually slideshow. There. Okay. Can you guys see that slideshow?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, fantastic. So one of the things I just want to take a look at is I do want to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Good. I do just want to kind of follow up on some of the work that I've been doing in the background as well. And it's perfect because it tailors into what Lynn was talking about. And again, this came about because more and more, even in Calgary, one of my good friends from elementary is an elementary teacher, and they have 42 languages in their school, no support for languages. And she has 11 EAL kids in her school, 3 of which are ELA #1, which means they're illiterate in their first language. So this is something that if we don't start getting ahead of, is only going to compound its effects. So, can we do this? Yes, you know who I am, yada, yada. So when I sat down to look at this, one of the first things I did was we needed some way to, as a province, start looking at what are the key signs and the key signals that we can use. And Lynn hit it multiple times, this notion of it needs to be predictable and it needs to be consistent. So what I did is I spent quite a bit of time building this universe, this one here. So this is, I just finished shooting the videos for this last week. Come on, where are we? Oh, good grief. There it is. So after quite a bit of research and talking to people, these were some of the systems. These are the expectations that we came up with for grade 12 or K to 12. Now you don't have to use all of them, but each one of these also has like a full write-up on it. So it kind of explains why it's there. And when we started with this, the other reason we wanted to have something really universal was I'm working with the APLC to get this actually translated by people, not AI, into about 20 different languages. So then these could actually be posted as well. It might be a bit overkill, but we're just trying to provide as much support as we can. So I started working on these universal expectations in phys ed. And then I started working with an ASL student of mine, and we just finished filming 3 videos that looks at the basics of greetings and some really simple signs in a class. Like, for example, when you do this, that means stop, right? One hand open, one hand on top. That's stop. So just that one sign, if a group of teachers, if you want kids to stop, we add that nonverbal piece to it. What it does is that we're actually activating that 87% of the communication that's nonverbal, right? So back in the 70s, they did all that research about like nonverbal versus verbal communication. And they know that, like, what is it? It's like 37%-ish is about your tone. 57% is about what you do with your body, and only about 8 to like 20, what is it? 17 to 8 to 28 to 17% is actually what you say. So if we can activate that, but have it universal, it actually is starting to make a difference. So this new video series, I'm trying to get permission because she's still in grade 12, but it is coming out. And universal is the key, predictable and consistent. And yeah, the other big thing that I'm working on right now is this visuals that she was talking about. I have a bunch of different students who I'm trying to get permission to use them to start building that bank. So starting with that 12 universal expectations, we're working on a green photo and a red photo. Really simple. For example, stop. What does that look like? It's a kid standing there looking in one direction versus the kid who's still running around. So if we have a lot of these students who don't have that language basis, we can actually point to them and be like, is it this one or is it this one? No, we want this one, to try and build that bank as we go. Talked about that. When I taught elementary, one of my favorite things to do is I'd take photos of the kids in a horrible lineup at the door. Then I'd take one out, a decent one, an okay one, and a perfect one. And we actually posted those. So when I'd say, okay, everyone line up at the door, all I would have to do is point at the photo that I saw. So if I pointed at a 2, we weren't going until it looked like the number 4. So this idea of visuals to take away what we say, I've had a lot of success with it, and I'm pretty excited about it. DEAR method, this is just a beautiful way to teach where you actually demonstrate first. You don't say a simple thing. If you have questions about that, we can talk about that after. And I just want to remind people of some resources that we have built out and that are available. And then I'm done talking. We'll put it out to you guys and see how I can support you. So this World Games resource, it actually was built by a group of students, and it is awesome. Like, it is awesome. I'm currently playing a Russian game called Lapta in my gym, and it's unbelievable because it levels the playing field because no one knows how to play it. So that idea of bringing them in is really important. The rules for that project that this group did was they had to make all of the equipment from trash. They couldn't spend any money on anything, and they had to make enough to play the game with 30 kids. There's also, we had talked in the past about my journaling and dialogue support. That's now live. It's now being used around the province as well. I do have a resource on starting, ending, and making teams, a manipulative scope and sequence that many people haven't been able to find. But if you want that, I can send it to you. It breaks down all of the main skills, and then the world game resources at the end. Other than that, I think that is, yeah, pedagogy series. I just want to open this one document up. That's not the right one. That's not it at all. Apparently I won't be opening it up. Anyway, it's a 15-page document. It breaks down the whole scope and sequence for each of those skills. And I know many of you don't need that. You guys know what you're doing. Specific skill session, scope and sequencing, good. And I think that is it. So I'm going to just stop sharing.